the Most Valuable Player Award, or for short, the MVP Award. Throughout NBA history, winning this award was your ticket of recognition that proved and showed that you were the best player in that season. When it came to the greatest player of all time debate, it proves their dominance throughout their careers. But now more than ever, especially this last decade, winning the MVP Award has way more qualifications to win it now more than ever, and due to that, recent MVP winners have been more debated on whether they should win it or not. And there have been more and more people deserving that trophy every season due to the modern style of basketball. So on today's video, we're going to rank the last 10 NBA regular season MVPs on a tier list to get to the bottom of who had the best MVP campaigns compared to each other and to see who deserved it more than others, because the MVP will always be a controversial topic each season. And for the qualifications of who gets ranked where, it'll be the overall season dominance wise, the level of deserving set award over others, and milestones achieved in that season. And remember, the rankings here are not the law, so be sure to leave your thoughts and criticisms in the comment section below. Be sure to subscribe to see my videos when they come out, and like the video to support the channel and to see more videos like these. But as usual, this might be a long one, so you already know who it is. Roll it!
3, 2, 1.
Weights in the weight room, so he stitched up in the left. He ain't doing all that.
The yearly college basketball tournament is finally here, and while it's time to get together with friends and family to watch the most exciting tournament of the year, I think it's also time you check out today's video sponsor, DraftKings. With college basketball coming to its final conclusion in March, DraftKings has been my way to show off my prediction skills based off the matchups of the most exciting time in college basketball and try to predict upsets throughout the tournament. And you can do the same here because new users of DraftKings can just bet $5 on any wager, and new customers can instantly receive $200 in bonus bets. And if you're wondering what you can use those $200 in bonus bets for, try parlaying multiple tournament games together in one bet for a shot at even bigger winnings. And if mobile sports betting is not available in your state yet, don't worry, you can still get on the phone with DraftKings Daily Fantasy, where they offer cash prize contests for nearly every sport. So to not miss out on this opportunity, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use promo code Alvini and bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code Alvini only at DraftKings Sportsbook. And thank you again for DraftKings for sponsoring this video, and let's get back into it.
NBA players don't covet time off at this point in the season unless, of course, you're still playing. In that case, the Heat, who have been resting for a week, now they're going to find another way to fill their Sunday afternoon. LeBron will be doing some light lifting with a weighty accomplishment.
Yeah, tomorrow's the ceremony in Miami, where he'll raise not one, not two, not three, but his fourth MVP trophy. And he is joining an incredible list here. These players have won at least 4 MVPs. Michael Jordan, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So only the second non-center to achieve that feat. His overall and three-point field goal percentages this season were the best of his 10-year career. Let's go Samsung next level to show you just how valuable the King was to his team this season. Didn't lead the league in scoring or assists, but put the two together, and no player created more points this year. James scored or assisted on nearly 44 points per game. That is the most in the NBA.
To start off this video, we now have the all-time leading scoring holder, LeBron James. However, in the 2012-13 NBA season, where people debatably called LeBron James' best overall season as an athlete, and LeBron at his absolute peak, coming into this NBA season, LeBron was already coming off his 3rd MVP in 4 years, but as we all know, there is such a thing as voter fatigue and wanting to find the next big thing to be the face of the NBA for a season, or a better story than the actual best player in the NBA, something we'll be seeing later. But LeBron James that year was able to go into the 2012-13 NBA season after winning his first championship as a Miami Heat and somehow one-up himself, solidifying himself as the rightful owner of his 4th NBA regular season MVP. In that season alone, he was able to grow as a player more and more, and you can see that in his stats, completing one of the most all-around scoring seasons in his career, averaging 26.8 points a game, which ranked him 4th in the NBA. However, on a career high of 56% from the field, and even better at 40% from 3 on 3 attempts a game. game. But while you think that's the end of his dominance, he was able to show even more of his improvement by averaging 7.3 assists a game, another career high. And just to hear more of just how LeBron James was statistically the best player with no one being able to compete, he was 5th in the NBA in total field goal percentage as a forward, 3rd in true shooting, made the most shots in the NBA that year, he owned the best plus minus in the league. The list absolutely goes on. I can see why people could say this season in particular was LeBron's peak as a player, and he was quite literally unstoppable when it came to anyone trying to go against him. And add on to the fact that Miami Heat was still in the Heatles era with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, the Heat owning the 10th best record of all time at 66-16, and the amazing 27-game win streak that at the time accounted for the 2nd longest win streak of all time in a season. You can only imagine how much it truly was impossible to not vote for LeBron James that season for his individual success, his dominance in that season as a player and for his team. So it was no wonder that he was able to win the first ever unanimous MVP trophy in league history. Oh wait, I'm sorry, that didn't happen. So when it came to the voting of the NBA awards, it comes down to a panel of many on top of many analysts, sports media personalities, and the like. But in the 2012-13 NBA season, there stood one person who gave a first place vote to Carmelo Anthony to not let LeBron James get the first ever unanimous MVP ever. That person was Gary Washburn of the Boston Globe. When he was found out for what he did, he was quoted to say, "When I placed my MVP vote a few weeks ago, I knew I would be in the minority. I knew LeBron James was the prohibitive favorite to win his 4th award because he was unquestionably the best player in the game. However, I voted for Carmelo Anthony based on his importance to the New York Knicks, who, if you haven't been paying attention the past decade, have failed to be relevant." Now, someone like Gary Washburn will be pretty prevalent in the future as we get to other MVP selections, but in 2013, this choice was seen dumb and irrational as the best player in the world was doing what he did best, while Gary Washburn went for more of a narrative-based choice due to Carmelo Anthony's effectiveness on a crippling Knicks organization looking for a successful run in the NBA. Again, narratives like this will become more prevalent in the future of this video, but for now, consider Gary as a stepping stone for future selections. But anyways, with Gary doing that, LeBron was not the unanimous winner. However, basically treated as so. But when it comes down to the ranking of this season, or I guess of LeBron James himself, we have to be real with ourselves. This video is already starting off with a S tier ranking as LeBron James gave us a near perfect example of an MVP while also having the dominance to make his team considered to be one of the best all-time teams ever record-wise, becoming a statistical anomaly, and with everyone undisputably calling him so, leaves no doubt of how high the standard is to be on top of this tier list. Now we move on to another feat of absolute dominance in the form of the 2014 NBA regular season MVP, Kevin Durant. Already a 3-time straight scoring leader and having 1 NBA Finals appearance on his resume, Kevin Durant came to the 2013-14 NBA season looking to level up and get back to that point again where he can go after another championship opportunity. And this season now more than ever, his scoring prowess was needed as Russell Westbrook, who was coming off a meniscus tear due to a certain Patrick Beverley loose ball situation, would have to carry his team to wins while his co-star was recovering and getting surgery done. And that's exactly what he would do before the time of the injury. Actually, the Thunder were already 23-5 with the best record in the Western Conference. But without Russell Westbrook in the lineup, KD had the sole duty to carry his team to wins. And during that time, KD led the Thunder to a 19-7 record while averaging 35 points a game on 53 39-87 splits and having multiple efficient 40-point bombs, and to top it all off, a 54-point masterclass against the Golden State Warriors. Overall, Kevin Durant averaged 32 points a game, which led the NBA by a whole 5 points over Carmelo Anthony, who averaged 27, 4 rebounds, and a career-high 5.5 assists per game, which, again, he kind of needed because Russ was out. He clearly showed the NBA what he was capable of in that season as a near 7-foot scorer and was able to keep his team above water while his co-star was out with a season-ending injury almost, with a record of 59-23. The second best record in the Western Conference and the second best record of the NBA. Outside of that, he became the first player since T-Mac in the 02-03 season, averaged 32 points a game in the season, became one of 5 players ever to have 4 or more scoring titles, led the NBA in minutes played, was first in box plus minus, led the NBA in usage overall, and once again, the NBA's best and most dominant player. And you could even add in some storyline points here and there to the fact that he had to carry the Thunder on his back due to Russell Westbrook being out. But when it came to the NBA voters, as the MVP conversation came to its final days, Kevin Durant himself almost won it in unanimous fashion. However, another great season from LeBron James where he barely topped his last season scoring-wise was considered, but only was given 6 first-place votes that gave KD the win, and deservedly so. Being able to lead the NBA in scoring, leading your team to a near-best record in the NBA, showcasing your carrying skills by keeping your team way above water without your second star, and all this considerations for winning MVP in the past years, being second in voting in 3 separate occasions. His time to win an MVP trophy was coming soon, and all it took was an all-time great scoring season and a little bit of narrative behind his cause. But when it comes to placing it on this tier list, I would give it a strong A-tier placement, however, barely edging out of the S-tier ranking. While people don't talk about this season much for KD in retrospect or in the future, he has been consistently on top of the league scoring-wise. As we all know, there will be other players who are able to capture that true dominance and play truly to be in the S-tier category. However, his season that year did capture what it means to be a true best player in the NBA, and also he was the most valuable player in the NBA due to the absence of Westbrook. However, I, in my opinion, just didn't think it had enough to be totally up there with a season like 2013 LeBron, but he is on the cusp of it. Again, y'all can put him in the S tier. I can understand why.
Alright. I am a little nervous, Bob. This is a tremendous honor. First and foremost, I have to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for blessing me with the talents to play this game, with the family to support me day in, day out. I'm his humble servant right now, and I can't say it enough how important my faith is to how I play the game and who I am. So I'm just blessed, and I'm thankful for
Wardell Stephen Curry, the man who would eventually change the NBA for years to come, but coming into the 2014-15 NBA season, he's coming off his first ever All-Star appearance, his second ever playoff appearance, and once again becoming a statistical anomaly with his 3-point shooting prowess. But in the 2014-15 season, he would truly become the Stephen Curry we'd all start to take notice of, and of course, it would also be the Golden State Warriors coming out party. Let's just start with the basics for Stephen Curry as a player in that season. Stephen Curry in that season would go on to average 23 points, 7 assists, and 2 steals a game while shooting 44% from 3 on 8 threes a game, which at that point would be a career high rate for him attempts-wise, broke the record for the most threes made in an NBA season with 286, which broke his own record of 272 a few seasons before, and broke the leader before, Ray Allen's record, by 17. Gave the Warriors the best record in franchise history at that point with a record of 67-15, and funny enough, fun fact, became the first player ever to win a 3-point contest, receive an MVP, and even though this won't be considered in the ranking, also won an NBA championship in that same season. But this season could have not been done and had as much success if it wasn't for Steve Kerr being hired in the summer for Mark Jackson, who people have claimed was the reason Steph became Steph in the NBA and set up the foundation for the team. However, as we all know from current times, Stephen Curry became a huge beneficiary of Steve Kerr's system, aiming to get Curry open for more efficient 3-point opportunities and made him more of a facilitator in the offense. With that also brought upon the come up of his longtime partner in crime, Klay Thompson, who averaged a career high of 21 points a game and slowly made Draymond Green into more of a household name as a top-tier role player, averaging a steal and a block a game that year. This was also the most successful the Warriors have been in a long time, and it was off the back of Stephen Curry's play and Steve Kerr's X's and O's strategies. And due to that, Stephen Curry won the MVP, claiming 100 of the 130 first place votes over people like James Harden with 25 due to his all-around play and leading the Rockets to the 2nd seed, and LeBron James with 5 for what I can only claim is because he's LeBron. Compared to his other MVP seasons, this would be one of the weaker campaigns if he actually somehow won it. So Stephen Curry is the winner for what I can basically wrap up being the best player on the best team in the NBA. But here's where I think I might get some disagreement, as due to this season, I'll be giving Stephen Curry's 2015 campaign a C-tier ranking. And it might come as a surprise, but let me explain. Out of the 10 people we'll talk about today, his ends up being the one of the weaker ones, due to him, again, just simply being the best player on the best team, which is not a dig on him as a player at all, but a compliment to how well functioned his team was, where he only had to average 23 points a game for his team to win a franchise most 67 games that year. No one else that year had a super dominant season to warrant any real best player in the league talks for them to win it or be considered, and that's plain to see in the ballot, with the only person getting real consideration in the second place line was James Harden, who was again also in the second place standings wise with the Rockets, and LeBron on a way weaker season stats wise. He obviously deserves it as a player, but on the tier list, it's a weaker claim compared to the 10 we will talk about today. But if you disagree, anything I can do except explain my stance. And now we come up with Stephen Curry's second ever MVP season. He joins 10 other NBA players ever in history who was able to get this award 2 times in a row, and as we all know, it was for very good reason. But first, let's talk about what came up before. As we all know, the season before where he won his first ever MVP and first championship, Stephen Curry, I am sure, was super motivated to come back into this next season, ready to do the same thing with his core, if not even more. Remember when I talked about his MVP season last year was based off the fact he was the best player on the best team in the NBA, and compared to the rest of the MVPs in this video, it isn't as strong as the other ones when it comes to having a higher placement on the tier list? Well, this season was the complete opposite, as Stephen Curry was the absolute superstar of the team and did things that only superstars and legends could do. And I'm sure it started off with that first game of the season against the New Orleans Pelicans, who he destroyed in the playoffs last year, scoring 40 points in the season opener, and then 4 days later scoring a season high of 53 points against that same Pelicans team. That alone should have sent a message to the league that Stephen Curry has now had his training weights released by Coach Steve Kerr to wreak havoc in the NBA that season, and he took full advantage of it. That entire season was definitely an all-time season in its own right, and it was highlighted by Stephen Curry. Let's start with the basics. In this season, he became the first ever player to average 30 points in a season while being in the 50-40-90 split club. He made a total of 402 threes in that season, which to this day is the record for most threes in a season. And also, he broke his own record of most threes made in a season, but broke it by 116 threes. Owned one of the best true shooting seasons of all time as a guard, and tied the record for the most threes made in the game with 12 against OKC, where he delivered us one of the most soul-shattering game winners of the decade.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry! With 0.6 of a second remaining.
The true showing of dominance he showed in that season, especially as a 6'2" guard, is possibly not something we'll ever see ever again in the NBA, especially with the efficiency that he did it at. But overall in that season, he owned the most points per game in the league, had the most steals per game and in total, was top 10 in assists, owned the best free throw percentage in the league, owned the NBA's best plus minus with 11.9, and led the Warriors to the best regular season record of all time, with a record of 73-9. People already thought the Warriors were on top of the league by the way they made it to the finals and had the league MVP on their team last year, but then they decided to come into that next season even better than the last, which is not something you can say a lot of teams all time have ever done before. So you know what I'm going to say. How could anyone dare even try to compete with Stephen Curry in this historic season for himself and for the Warriors themselves? The answer is absolutely no one. The NBA media voters gave Stephen Curry the honor of becoming the NBA's first and currently only unanimous league MVP in NBA history to end off this amazing regular season. So on the tier list, where does this rank? Obviously the answer is the S tier with 2013 LeBron James. Both are examples of dominance, leading your team to near historic heights while at the same time doing it with otherworldly efficiency, and will be remembered for years to come in the record books and NBA history in general. No debate, at least hopefully, but again, clear as day difference between Stephen Curry and his 2014 MVP campaign and his 2015 NBA campaign.
Where do you see the MVP award going, Stephen A?
Got to give it to Russell Westbrook with the sensational season he had, the one-man wrecking crew that he was. I will say this. It was nip and tuck for me until the last week and a half to 2 weeks of the season. I've been a James Harden guy all year long. I think he's been completely underappreciated in this MVP race, averaging 29, 11, and 8 for the season for a Houston Rockets team that ended up the 3rd overall seed in the NBA and clearly within the Western Conference, for crying out loud. I thought James Harden was absolutely sensational. Then the last couple of weeks with their backs against the wall per se and the team appearing to slide, Russell Westbrook goes on a tear, has 7 straight 3 triple-doubles, like 8 in the last 9 games, and James Harden had tailed off. And because it's a regular season award, considering the way in which he carried the Oklahoma City Thunder, who seemed to be absolutely nothing without him, because every time he stepped off the court, guys didn't appear to be able to do anything, you have to give the award to Russell Westbrook. The only other thing that I would say is this. They could call it a regular season award all they want to, which obviously it is. But if you're going to wait this long to announce it, don't tell me at all that a postseason performance had nothing to do with what transpires. Yes, James Harden and the Houston Rockets beat Oklahoma City in the NBA playoffs, but in those Western Conference Finals, particularly that last closeout Game 6, when an imposter wearing a James Harden uniform showed up, shot 2 of 11, finished with just 10 points, refused to take a shot for the first 18 minutes of the game, for crying out loud. That was not the James Harden we know, we love, and we've been watching, or we had been watching all season long. Something was wrong with him that particular night, or the person that was impersonating him, because it didn't appear to be him. All of those things considered, along with the fact that Russell Westbrook averaged a triple-double, with Oscar Robertson in attendance to honor him in Oklahoma City before the season had ended, calling him the real MVP, etc., etc. I just think the momentum shifts to the individual greatness he put on display throughout this season over his former teammate, and I think that's going to hold true. I believe that Russell Westbrook is going to win the league MVP honors.
As the game of basketball changes, many things within the sport will also change. And one of those things that would end up changing and meaning eventually is the meaning of becoming the NBA's most valuable player. And if Gary Washburn was roasted for his voting of Carmelo Anthony in 2013, then as you can imagine, many more of his types would become more commonplace in the 2017 MVP race that saw Russell Westbrook winning it all. And it was in the most interesting way possible that I have ever seen. With that being said, let's talk about it. Coming into the 2016-17 NBA season, Russell Westbrook started off the season with devastating news that his co-star and Kevin Durant would be leaving for greener pastures, joining the team they lost to in the conference finals, the Golden State Warriors, the team they had a 3-1 lead on and blew. Obviously, the news hurt NBA fans everywhere, but the one who truly got the short end of the stick was Russell Westbrook, who is now stuck on a team by himself with a bunch of role players and a 4th-year Victor Oladipo due to the training of his longtime power forward in Serge Ibaka. This team was not expected to do much damage in the Western Conference, as Russell Westbrook is only one man, and with a bunch of uncertainties and not a lot of experience coming along with that, when it came to being a second option on his team, no one else on the team can carry the burden it took to be a competent duo with them. However, many people believe the Thunder can still make something happen, as many predicted before the season that the Thunder could fall anywhere between the 5th seed and the 8th seed off of the back of Westbrook. And to be real with you, that was only an understatement of what would actually end up happening on the court. The OKC Thunder did in fact make it to the 6th seed with a record of 47-35, but it was due to a historical season from their franchise player. As we all know, that year Russell Westbrook would go on and average a triple-double of 31 points a game, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists a game, which would make him the first player since Oscar Robertson in the 1961-62 season to do so. But he again did it in historic form. In that season, he owned a streak of 7 straight triple-doubles, owned the most triple-doubles in a season with 42, owned the highest scoring triple-double with a 57.1 among many, many others. But just like Stephen Curry the season before, people truly made it their duty to watch as many Thunder games as possible, as he kept getting triple-double after triple-double after triple-double in literally over half of the games played. And it was needed for their team's success, as when he recorded a triple-double in that season, his team went 33-9, which meant in games he didn't get one, the Thunder went 14-26. Obviously, night and day the effect he served in that team if he didn't pour his heart and soul into every game. And if you weren't convinced that Russell Westbrook was the MVP, then you also had his historic 42nd triple-double game against the Denver Nuggets in the 3rd to last game of the season, where he recorded another 50-point game and also made the game-winning 3 that soiled the Nuggets' chances of making it to the playoffs that year.
Thunder's out of timeouts. Adams gives it back to Russ. Deep shot! What a perfect ending to a historic day!
A true end to a truly historic season. However, when it came down to the voters who dictated the winners at the end of the season, there was a lot of debate between himself and James Harden, who had a pretty similar season. James Harden, who came in second place due to all of his all-around play, getting 22 triple-doubles and almost averaging a triple-double while getting 11 assists a game, toppling Westbrook's 10. The debate on this was everywhere, and deservingly so. So at the end of the day, despite James Harden being on the better team and having similar stats, Russell Westbrook ended up doing more for his team, quite literally, owning the highest usage rate in NBA history. And as much as I hate to say it, if we're going to say that both were very similar players, Russ really squeaked him as a player that year at the end of the day. And if we really want to consider the only other first place voting recipients being Kawhi Leonard and LeBron, yeah, they didn't really stand a chance here. The mix of narrative, historic achievement, and dominance, while not being as skillful as others, definitely yielded results, as we can see by their record and playoff placement. And as much as I know I will catch shit for all this, all that together does equal a S tier ranking. Before making this video, I had it ranked much lower, but after doing the ample amount of research I do in these videos, I ended up convincing myself, even though you can argue that he wasn't the best player in the NBA skills-wise, he certainly was an athlete looking out for his team and playing his heart out and yielding results to make that happen. And remember, this is a regular season MVP, so if you disagree, just try to make a point from the regular season point of view, not overall. But this will definitely be on the lower side of the S tier spot. But again, you just had to be there, man. It was amazing, the stuff that he pulled off that season.
And the Kia NBA Most Valuable Player goes to James Harden, the Houston Rockets.
And after his second place standing to Russell Westbrook last year, now we go into what people's thoughts should have been a two-time straight MVP campaign in James Harden of the Houston Rockets. But this time around, probably out of spite of getting the MVP trophy stolen from him, James decided to go into this next season in a similar manner of Russ's MVP season. At least that's the way I like to think about it. But in this case, you can really say he wholeheartedly deserved it. First, as usual, let's set the scene. Coming into the 2017-18 NBA season, a new tandem in Houston was now created as Chris Paul was traded from the Clippers to the Rockets to serve as a relief for James Harden and bring in a second ball handler to again relieve James Harden for needing to do as much as he is used to. With that, and the Rockets also scoring the most three-point shots for a team in NBA history with 1,256, the spacing for James Harden became so good that James was able to do whatever he wanted, way more than he could last year. So instead of being the primary playmaker, who was now Chris Paul, with his assist averages going down from 11 to 8, he was now scoring more instead, increasing his averages from 29 to a leading 30 while shooting better from the field and from three. And add in the team success where the Rockets led the NBA with the best overall record of 65-17 and beating teams by an average of 10 points every night, it was safe to say outside of the Warriors, they were the most dominant team in the NBA. In that season, James Harden again led the league in scoring, was still third in assists despite the drop-off from last year, top 10 in steals, led the NBA in made three-pointers, led the NBA in usage that year, and of course, my favorite advanced stat, led the NBA in box plus minus. So what does the best player statistically on the best team in the league equal? It equals a really convincing MVP campaign where he took 86 of the total 101 first place votes. Who gets the rest of the 15? Well, it was LeBron James, who was part of a carry job in Cleveland due to the departure of Kyrie Irving and the massive turnaround the Cavs had during the trade deadline. But this year's narrative did not trample over who was the best player in the league on the best team in the league. And funny enough, I did not remember Russ not receiving any consideration for another MVP award, but again, the power of narrative was going to work this time. With that being said, due to his team's dominance and himself dominating the NBA, James Harden deserves the A tier for his efforts, joining the ranks of legends with his stats and being able to lead his team to one of the best records of the decade. Deserves a lot of considerations for the second best tier in this video, especially for the 1 year turnaround from his season last year to this year, which showed that he got even better or just played better in general. Because if he win that MVP from last year, he'd have to one up himself to win it again, and that's exactly what he did.
The 2019 Kia NBA Most Valuable Player goes to Giannis Antetokounmpo.
And now we get into a new generation of MVP winners, the European takeover. And it starts off with the winner of the 2018-19 MVP trophy, Giannis Antetokounmpo of the Milwaukee Bucks. Coming into this season, Giannis was already coming off of a Most Improved Player award the season before, so the next logical step is become the best player possible for as long as you can. And Giannis would go on and continue the discussion of him being one of the most dominant players in the NBA. In this season in particular, the Bucks were considered to be a team who could compete in the weekend Eastern Conference, as LeBron James would take his lead for the LA Lights the summer before the season started. It was truly the Bucks conference to take, garnering a record of 60-22. But people who have watched Giannis develop say that statistically, this is Giannis's most all-around season as a pro, averaging 27 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists, and a block and a steal a game, which ended up giving him second place in the DPOY race later that year. This season was all around Giannis's true coming out party in the NBA, and the Bucks needed every single contribution on the team, as he had to lead the Bucks in points, rebounds, and assists, which puts him in the conversation of other greats like LeBron James, Kevin Garnett, Scottie Pippen, and Dave Cowens as the only players to do that for their teams in a regular season. Overall, for the entire season, Giannis was 3rd in scoring, 6th in rebounding, 10th in blocks, and was 2nd in the league in box plus minus, and at the same time was only 5th in usage on that route. But while the Giannis for MVP train was rolling, this year proved to be very interesting with the MVP race, bringing us one of the more tight races and competitive races we've seen in a while, and possibly for this video, because while Giannis was leading the Bucks to the best record in the NBA overall, he had 2 other people having statistically impossible seasons themselves, and those 2 people was, again, James Harden, who I can only describe as rabid in that season, and Paul George, who had a career resurgence in OKC and took the top role on the team after being traded there a season ago. First, with James Harden, he was able to somehow up his 30-point per game season last year after winning his MVP and increased it by 6 points, being the first player since Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant to put up that high of a point per game average in years. But at the same time, he was able to average 35 points and 5 assists in 8 straight games, record a 50-15-15 game in the season, and one of only 4 players who have ever recorded 2,000 points and 600 assists in a season twice. James Harden legitimately put the fear of God into other NBA players' souls with 7 50-point games, 2 60-point games, and 18 40-point games. And for Paul George, he truly had a real comeback story after being traded from Indiana to help Russell Westbrook, and after a less than stellar first season, took the main scoring reign from Russ to be the 2nd leading scorer in the NBA with 28 a game and averaged 2 steals a game, which led the NBA. However, when it came down to the actual votes, Giannis was able to take 78 of the total 101 first place votes, while Harden got the rest of the 23. And yes, that meant PG-13 got 0. But it made sense. Giannis was once again one of the most dominant players on one of the most dominant teams in the NBA of the Bucks, while Harden, while impressive numbers-wise, may have been a victim to voting fatigue. And again, his team wasn't as good as the Bucks. AKA, they wasn't going to give the award to the same guy twice without a real reason to do so. But at the same time, it's kind of hard not to do that when he averaged 36 a game. But for me personally, with Harden being in the Harden Conference and only 7 games behind Giannis and only 4 games out of the first seed in the West, this MVP in my eyes could have gone either way. But I'm leaning towards Giannis for his all-around dominance on the court, so I wouldn't blame anyone who gave it to Harden in the first place. So due to that, I'll be giving him a B ranking on the tier list due to how tough the debate was between himself getting the MVP and James Harden's case of it. As a reminder, despite the statistical dominance that he had that season in his first MVP route, it was still a toss-up between who could have won it between himself and Harden. However, obviously we could talk about the potential voter fatigue in the scenario, but I think that shows way more of just how amazing that MVP class was more than anything else. But if you're going to win MVP twice, it takes a major one-upping of the season before to do it again.
It pissed me off because out of 101 votes, I got 16 first place votes. That's what pissed me off more than anything. You know, not saying that you know, the winner wasn't deserving of the MVP, but that pissed me off. And I finished second a lot in my career, either from a championship and now 4 times as an MVP. It's just a weird thing sometimes that I don't know how much we are really watching the game of basketball, or are we just in the narration mode, the narrative. I mean, I'm fine. Don't get it twisted. Like, I'm going back to my room, I'm perfectly fine. Like, I was pissed off at the reaction earlier when I saw it. I'm absolutely great now. I'm going back to my room, drink some wine, and sleep very well tonight. So let's not get it twisted. I'm great.
And for the second time this video, we have a back-to-back regular season MVP, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now, when it comes to being a back-to-back MVP, it means one or two things. One, you were truly the best player once again, had no other competition against you towards that right, or you was able to improve upon your stats so much that you took a whole new form for this MVP award. And that is exactly what Giannis did in the 2019-20 season. Now, I showed the first clip off the beginning because one, there wasn't really any formal ceremony due to it being the bubble season, and two, because the media was going at Giannis for years at this point for never making it to the promised land in the NBA Finals. And for his play not being the most traditional and basically slandering him for his shortcomings so far. And that LeBron James clip was just funny to me, considering you never see LeBron talk about that when it comes to anybody. But in that one moment, you heard him basically throw a sneak diss at NBA voters for not watching the game. But no, LeBron, we did watch the games very well, because in the 2019-20 season, Giannis went nuclear, much more for the Bucks than he did last year, upping his averages to a near league high 29.5 points a game, while averaging a made three a game, a career high 13 rebounds a game, and once again averaging a block and a steal a game. And as we all know, due to that, he ended up winning the NBA's Defensive Player of the Year award, which made him one of three players to do it with himself, Michael Jordan, and Hakeem Olajuwon to win both an MVP and a DPOY in the same season. So with that, also, it really bolstered his case for another MVP award. Add on the fact that the Bucks once again had the best record in the NBA with a record of 56-17. You once again just give Giannis the MVP off the traditional case, the best player on the best team. Add in the increase in production, being second in rebounding that year, making the most shots in the league. That year was truly a true show of dominance. And you already know what I have to say. He also did own the best box plus minus in the NBA. It was easily the right choice that Giannis earned the MVP in the 2019-20 season over LeBron James, and like he said, he owned 85 of the total 101 first place votes. It seemed like most of the voters agreed also, but in LeBron James' defense, he did lead the Lakers to a top seed in the West with AD, but considering that LeBron had the help of AD, who helped him and even outscored him in that season, while Giannis was the primary scorer doing everything, you can see how Giannis really garnered all the votes in retrospect. So with that being said, on the tier list itself, his season was one of historical significance. Well, outside of the COVID issue, but you know. But accolade-wise and dominance-wise, he truly earned an A tier on the tier list for his dominance all over the league in the regular season and how he carried the Bucks to the top seed in the NBA, and add another positive, winning the DPOY at the same time, showing his significance on both sides of the court. I can understand if you would want to put this in the S tier, but I don't think it reaches the dominance as Steph and LeBron, but it's definitely on the cusp of it, just like KD's earlier in this video.
Holding up his MVP trophy here in Denver.
From one European MVP winner, we move on to another one, this time the lowest drafted MVP in NBA history with Nikola Jokic. His story in his NBA career was absolutely interesting, coming in as a chubby, slow, and uncoordinated 7-footer, but the Nuggets saw something with his basketball IQ and ability to make things happen despite those shortcomings that gave them hints that he had the ability to become something much more. And being drafted to the Nuggets under Mike Malone, he was able to turn those weaknesses into strengths and gradually get better year after year. And coming into this year, you saw his offensive responsibilities increase from the year before, as he went to average 26 points a game, a career high, and way above his 19 points per game mark the year before. Now, as we all know, Nikola Jokic's achievement from a year-to-year basis goes pretty unnoticed as he scores with ease in the post, doesn't do anything flashy outside of a nice pass no one sees coming, and how he plays perfect team basketball that makes his players around him way better on the stat sheets. These people include Aaron Gordon, making himself look like one of the best cutters of all time, setting up many three-point shooters on the perimeter, and being the perfect foil to his perimeter co-stars in Jamal Murray and rising star Michael Porter Jr. Overall, that season, he went to average 26 points a game, was top 10 in rebounds with 10.8 a game, and most impressively, he averaged 8.3 assists a game, which was 6th in the NBA that year as a center, and marked him second all-time in the season for a center on the assist mark, just behind Wilt Chamberlain's 8.6 a game in the 1967-68 season. But there are many other accolades that season that he put up that truly put him in the MVP race, being second in the league with triple-doubles with 16, making the most field goals in the NBA that season, season, something people don't really talk about because of how low-key he is with his scoring and how he isn't doing it in an exciting way to captivate people. And of course, you already know I have to mention it. He owned the highest box plus minus in the NBA that season. And also another little piece of information that will be a part of the Jokic for MVP narrative was how he helped carry the Nuggets to the 3rd seed after Jamal Murray went down with a torn ACL late in the season on April the 12th. But in that time, he helped the Nuggets finish the season 13-5. However, when it came down to his MVP race, there was a lot of other scrutiny and many doubters from every corner. He wasn't the best player on the best team, which belonged to the Utah Jazz, weirdly enough, and the Phoenix Suns. Then you still had other teams who were barely behind those teams in the rankings if you wanted to make an argument for an Embiid or a Giannis again. And crazy enough, the story of the carry job of Stephen Curry, who is leading a very depleted Warriors team that didn't even make the playoffs that year due to the play-in format. But to everyone's surprise, Nikola Jokic ran away with the MVP trophy, taking 91 of the total 101 first-place votes. But with that, he has captivated the NBA media with his all-around game and leading one of the best teams in the NBA. However, even within that, he did win it over 5 other first-place voters in Joel Embiid, Stephen Curry, Giannis, Chris Paul, and weirdly enough, D Rose. I'm not getting into that one. Just look it up. It's a real thing. But with all that being said, people everywhere said their grievances with Nikola Jokic winning the MVP over people with better team standings like Joel Embiid, who absolutely leveled up in his play from that season to his credit. Stephen Curry, who had to go nuclear for his team to be above water and owned the league scoring title. And even though it would be more of a narrative MVP if that would be the case, but again, some people are just burned out from that type of thing. And Giannis, who, well, did Giannis things. But from what I can find online and looking through old clips, it was mainly due to his all-around impact to the team and his revolutionary stat line averaging a near triple-double as a center, which makes sense. However, people still didn't entirely care for that reason. For me, in this case, I really didn't have much of a definitive answer for this one either. I didn't expect the MVP race to be that cut and dry. With that being said, on the tier list though, just like Giannis' first MVP, I'm gonna leave it in the B tier. He did pop off to the scene and become an all-around threat for his team. However, due to his case not being the strongest, it does lose some points for me personally. But as we all know, we go into this next season, it becomes a very different story when other factors are brought in. And once again, we get another repeat MVP in this video. And once again, it's another example of one-upping yourself, making yourself even more deserving of the MVP in the first place with the 2-time MVP, Nikola Jokic. But in this case, even more skepticism for him winning it this year than he did last year. But again, as usual, let's start from the beginning. Coming into the 2021-22 season, Nikola Jokic had a day one lineup of himself, MPJ, Aaron Gordon, Will Barton, and Monte Morris. Not impressive in the slightest, but if things couldn't get any worse, MPJ goes down with a season-ending injury in his 9th game of the season, leaving him stranded all by himself for an entire season. In most cases, it'd be time just to pack it up for the season, as there wouldn't be much you can do with just Nikola Jokic by himself with no other reliable scorers on the team. But what Nikola Jokic was able to pull off was on one hand very impressive, and on the other hand historically dominant. Despite the missing of his 2nd and 3rd leading scorers on the team, Nikola was still able to pull with the Denver Nuggets, making them a top 10 offense in the NBA and scoring the 10th most points in the NBA per game. And that was with Nikola at the forefront of that, averaging a career high 27 points a game, taking more and more of the offensive responsibility than he did last year, which ranked him 6th in the league in scoring, while at the same time being the 2nd leading rebounder, one of the best offensive rebounders in the game, and still maintained a top 10 standing in the assist leaders that year. But at the same time that year, he was also able to put up the most triple doubles that season with 19. And for some people, this was the nail in the coffin for his MVP case, but it was the fact that Nikola Jokic owned the highest PER stat in NBA history with a PER stat of 32.85, which put him over guys like Giannis during his MVP seasons, Wilt Chamberlain, and Michael Jordan. But funny enough, this ended up being another detriment towards Nikola Jokic's detractors, as they weren't big fans of advanced stats, something Nikola Jokic was always on top of due to his efficiency and lack of turnovers with his playmaking. And before you ask, yes, he did lead the NBA in box plus minus, despite not being on a 50-win team, which is also something that has never been done before. Jokic MVP campaign may have been more in the dark and in the shadows than people want to admit due to his non-flashy game and his lack of true dominant games as a superstar, because the only time he gets much press was for his 4 2020 games he posted that year and his near 50-point performance against the Clippers. But at the end of the day, he led a very weak Nuggets team to the 6th seed in a very loaded Western Conference and only 2 games out of a 50-win season, which is usually the mark of a really good team. So he had both the stats on his side that gave him more evidence towards his dominance and his narrative of how he carried his team to the point while also supporting his claim. So who was the people who were in the race against him? Well, once again, Joel Embiid showed up to have another shot at the MVP this time, leading the NBA in scoring and being the first center since Shaq to do so as a center. However, he himself wasn't at the top seed of the East, even though it was a 2-game difference. And of course, Giannis doing, again, Giannis things. However, again, Nikola Jokic won it again to most people's dismay. However, according to the NBA media, it was a lot closer of a race this time around, with Nikola Jokic only taking home 65 of the 100 first place votes, while Embiid took 26 and Giannis took 9. Now, I totally understand the point of view of Embiid supporters for his role in being, scoring-wise, the most dominant center in the NBA, but on the other side of the US, you had Jokic doing things more all around for his team. The Jokic versus Embiid debate will always be something super talked about in the NBA sphere, while Embiid is still waiting to win his first MVP. But this time around, Jokic, for his dominance and carrying of the Nuggets, ended up winning it over him, despite Embiid doing more scoring-wise and defensively. But on the tier list itself, I will be putting this in the A tier, with everyone else already up there as the last one on the video. I can understand the point of view of some people wanting it lower for the narrative bias that may have been there in a place for everybody, but this ranking ain't due to narrative. It was due to his dominance all over and what translated due to it. Just like the Westbrook one of old, every contribution was needed for this team to win, and if not, the season would have been a complete fucking wash. Add that in the historical context of owning the 3rd most triple doubles in a season for a center behind Wilt Chamberlain, and being able to make a team with a roster of that stature still one of the best offenses off of his own back. I think that deserves an A, at least regular season wise. To be an MVP comes in many different forms: dominant storylines, historical context, or even a mix of the three. In the 10 people we looked at today, in the 10 years we looked at today, we all saw different sides of each coin of the three and how all 3 of them formed together on this tier list. And believe me, after the writing process of this, I am still debating if I want it to stay that way it was originally put together. But when it all comes down to every MVP, it is entirely special in their own way for one reason or another. The historical seasons that Russell Westbrook and Curry gave us, the straight up dominance of LeBron and Giannis, and the ones who simply just went out there to be the best player on the best team that no one can dispute. But as always, let me hear your own thoughts on this topic in the comment section below, and let me hear how you change this tier list, if even at all. And remember, as always, this is just my opinion. We can all think differently and come to different conclusions. But as always, I hope you enjoyed today's video and learned something new, as my vision for this channel is to inform and entertain. Check out my social medias for the inside life of Albini Builder channel news. Check out my Twitch channel and my second channel where I post my Twitch stuff. And lastly, if you want to talk to your boy, there is always my Discord. But with all that out of the way, this is your boy, Albini Linguini, saying peace.